Well, good evening, everybody. Honored guests and dignitaries, poets and poetry lovers. It's 2012 was the last time I was at this festival, so it's really great to be back on the stage. And my task is to try and give you a little bit of insight into the history of Poetry Africa. And really the history of Poetry Africa is tied up intimately with the history of the Centre for Creative Arts. The Centre for Creative Arts was established in 1996 as a special project of the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Natal. It was then called Professor Brenda Gourlay, with the special efforts of Professor Michael Chapman, and the first director appointed was Adrien Donker. Ad Donker, as he was known, was a publisher, a book publisher, who had notable for publishing writers who went against the grain, and other publishers were not keen to touch because of their fear of incurring the wrath or the displeasure of the apartheid regime at the time. And together with the poet, the well-known poet Brayton Breitenbach, Ad Donker and Brayton used poetry as one of the first activities of the Centre for Creative Arts, and that resulted in the Poetry Africa Festival in 1997. I'm very pleased to see two poets who were at that first festival, as Don Matera and Guineam Shloki, are here with us tonight. We must remember then, although today there's a proliferation of poetry festivals, at that time Poetry Africa was the only annual poetry festival in this country, and possibly in Africa. So Poetry Africa was really a pioneer of its time, taking poetry off the page and onto the stage. I think has really played a vital role in popularizing poetry, especially for the youth. When I came in 1999, the challenge was to provide growth and development whilst maintaining those very high literary standards that had already been set. Audience development was alongside the evening performances here at the Snellen Theatre. We addressed that through a crucial widening of the festival footprint with extensive day programs from 1999 onwards, encompassing spaces around the city and township areas as a specific effort to make poets and poetry available and more accessible, with events in museums, art galleries, libraries, and community centers. And as a strategic key to developing both poets and audiences of the future, we took very deliberate steps to shape school visiting programs, school poetry competitions, and campus activities. And in 1999, we already had activities at 20 schools and 4 tertiary institutions. 1999 was also the start of the poetry programs inside Westfield Prison. The first open mic sessions were held in 2000 at this theatre, managed by Anissa Malanga. I don't know if she's with us tonight. Also in 2000, we began a very important partnership with the KZN Department of Education to engage practicing teachers about the presentation of literature in the classroom, bearing in mind that many of the poets that were participating were themselves educators. We've even had vice-chancellors, many professors, and they were certainly able to input to practicing teachers about how to go about the teaching of literature in the classroom. And this Educators Forum, as it was titled, became a regular feature both during Time of the Writer and Poetry Africa festivals. In 2001, we began exchanges with the Tutukani Harm Reduction Center for Street Children, which in subsequent years included their involvement in the creation of artworks. By 2001, we were also working with various university departments to feed into the academic programs And within the next few years, we had multiple events with language and literature departments, music departments, drama departments, departments of communication, political studies, media studies, gender studies, not just at the universities of Durban and Pietermaritzburg, but also at the University of Durban-Westville, Technikon, which is now called the DUT, UNISA, and ML Sultan. All of these programs depend on the specific skills and expertise of the participating poets. And I would like to thank you, and particularly those poets in the front, because you're allowed to embark on a week of similar activities where you'll be engaging with various communities, and we really do thank you for those efforts, which go a long way to developing poetry skills in this city. 2001 still also had a focus on that natural link between music and poetry, and we've had amazing musicians grace the stage from the start. Maskandis and choral-playing musicians, choral-playing griots, and artists such as Linton Kwesi Johnson, Shiwaniso, Daniel Waro, Oliver Mutukudzi, Vuzi Mashaslela, Tumi Mulakani, Didi Awadi, Madala Koneni, Shiani Nkobo, Sid Kitchen, Libs van der Spooy and Guy Battery, Godessa, Roger Lucy, Concord and Kabinda, and Sazi Blamini, not for the first time tonight. Also in 2001, Poetry Africa held a highly successful event in Johannesburg at the Windybrow Theatre, and I think Don and Bena were both there at that occasion, which was also attended by the then Minister of Arts and Culture, Benin Ngubane. The following year included events in Nelspruit, co-organized with Ray Piri, and the year following, Poetry Africa participated in events near the Great Kai River in the Eastern Cape, organized with Zolani Mkiva. In 2002, Poetry Africa hosted an outdoor Poetry in the Park event in Gugu Blamini Park, and also had a slot at the Splash Fen Music Festival, and later at the Awesome Africa Festival. We introduced slam poetry competitions in 2010, working with the nowadays poets, Zimbongi Zezimanji, and I think Menzi Maseko was involved in those days, and he's here tonight. Yeah, coordinating monthly programs, building up to the slam finals at the end of the year at Poetry Africa. And at this time, when slam poetry was not really well known, we brought in poets like Jane Fenton Keane, Jill Batson, and Bob Holman. Bob Holman had been one of the founders of the slam movement in the United States, and they really helped us just to give a shape. And with time, obviously, these slam competitions have developed a more African nature, and I'm very pleased about that. Local poetry groups were popping up everywhere, especially on tertiary campuses, and they became important partners in all these processes as the Durban Slam Jam developed in the following years. From 2003, poetry became an important space for book launches here in the Stedman foyer. And from the first year, Adams Booksellers have been providing book tables, selling books, poetry books, and other literature. And I'd like to congratulate Cedric for that long-standing partnership. I think Cedric has served Adams for nearly 40 years now. It's a remarkable achievement. So in 2004, we were running so many activities at the BAT Center, seminars, workshops. We had relocated the open mic sessions down there, with over 100 people sometimes registering to present their work. The Slam Jam had been moved, and we decided to experiment with moving the festival finale, the Saturday night finale, to the BAT. And it has always been a jam-packed occasion ever since. We established operational partnerships for activities at places such as the Center for African Literary Studies in Pietermaritzburg, the Kaya Multi-Art Center in KwaMashu, and I saw Edmund here tonight as well. Thank you, Edmund. The Rotary Museum in Grafville, the Nelson Mandela Youth Center in Chatsworth, the Diaconia Center and Stable Theatre in the city centre, and other colleges and centres as the years went on. There were also international partnerships with Winternachten Festival in the Netherlands, the Ortspraak Festival in Sweden, and the Medellin Festival in Colombia. Poets from Poetry Africa got invited to other festivals and programs around the world, and Poetry Africa also became a platform for the presentation of various literary awards. The 10th anniversary of Poetry Africa was celebrated in 2006 with a 2-day special edition in Johannesburg, with Museum Africa and other venues. Bene, you were there performing with Vic Khoza and Pops Muhammad, that's right. The celebrations continued with the week-long festival here in Durban, opened by the Minister of Arts and Culture, Dr. Pallo Jordan, and included a special focus on Imbongis and indigenous language poetry. Jessica, you were here, and so was Rustam, if I recall correctly. In 2006 was also the year that the Mazizi Kuneni Foundation was launched, and we were working with a team of young poets to introduce the work of Mazizi Kuneni to schools. And the opening night of the festival featured tribute readings of poems by Mazizi Kuneni. And I'm very pleased to say one of the young poets is in the selection this year. Nkolosi, where are you? He was part of that young team. 2007, Poetry Africa went to Kenya. This included a 5-day program at the World Social Forum with a principal focus on issues around migration. Other international programs followed in Mozambique, Reunion, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Botswana, also Cape Town and Johannesburg, also Sweden, and a prominent program in the Great Medellin Festival in Colombia. Now, these are just some of the great or the early milestones, just a few of them. It's impossible really to discuss 20 years in just 10 minutes. But I think the people are more familiar, we are more familiar perhaps with the more recent history of this festival. This is just to provide a brief insight into some of the initiatives that give this festival foundation and substance. And in the last few years, my own responsibilities with Arterial Network have taken me across the continent of Africa to many countries. And it's very gratifying to hear how well respected Poetry Africa is and how well known it is in many other countries. And this is because, although Poetry Africa is an international festival with prominent poets from around the globe, a signature element was the focus, the importance of connecting with the continent of Africa. A very deliberate attempt that we have made across the years. And this was particularly important for bridging South Africa's alienation from the continent in the post-apartheid era, and during a time when xenophobia and ignorance bedeviled cultural relations. It is also part of a larger effort to understand and celebrate the diversity of cultures through poetry, and to facilitate intercultural dialogue and exchange. Poetry Africa has now hosted hundreds of poets down the years. There was a list being scrolled up earlier. And although everyone has personal highlights, to my mind, it is the spread of diverse offerings within a given festival that gives Poetry Africa its special character. You may, for example, remember the sweetness of Khabiba Badurun, the heart-wrenched articulations of Anki Kroch, the imposing presence of Mutu Baruka, or Saul Williams, or Benjamin Zephaniah, the humor of Julius Shingono, the edgy provocativeness of Lesego Mpoloki, the totally off-the-wall sounds of Jaap Lonk, the passion of Lebo Mashili and Klinem Shlopi, poets with intellectual complexity, poets with warmth and humility, the nuance and subtlety, feminist activists such as Shalja Patel, political activists like our big brother Dennis Brutus, and the pumped-up energy of Ewok, Imbongi praise poets and rappers. And what about the nervousness of new poets coming onto the stage for the first time, and even established poets who also find stage performances challenging? And the point is that this stage is a stage for all kinds of poets and all kinds of poetry. And I think that diversity gives Poetry Africa its beauty. If there's any specific identity, I would suggest that there's a preference for South Africans and Africans who have a unique, poetically expressive position on social and political issues. Poetry with a message, poetry with a meaning, and poets who can provide a transformative effect in our lives. And transformation cuts across many levels. In the early 2000s, a deliberate attempt to focus on black poets from South Africa and Africa played an important role in changing the complexion of audiences in this theatre. Transformation also speaks to staff processes and systems. And within the context of this festival, let's not forget transformation of our minds through poetry. And access is a central thread, not just access to poets or to theatres, but access to resources, opportunities and infrastructure that allow for equitable distribution, equitable participation in the arts, either as a poet or as someone who enjoys literature. It's also about accessing the current and necessary conversations. How does poetry and Poetry Africa speak to the challenges of our world today? How does it become a platform to voice ideas and inputs on current issues? For example, what about how to approach the matter of free education? By keeping a good focus on these fundamentals, the festival continues to hold its relevance in an increasingly competitive environment. Times change and context will change, and the festival will continue to evolve accordingly. But having looked around at other festivals and arts events, I think it's fair to say that Poetry Africa has set significant benchmarks and been a leader in many respects, both conceptually and at the level of professional implementation, developing high competencies in arts management. Magdalene Reddy is here tonight, Nashin Mudli you can think of, and others. Tani Mungwe, Sakili Gumedi, and Sipandili Shlongwe, and the team have been holding the fort and providing continuity these past 3 or 4 years. And now David Wamashivela is here as the director of CCA. David is a previous participant in this festival, himself an excellent poet, and there's no doubting his passion and commitment to the tasks. And David, can't see you in the dark, but we wish you success going forward, you and your team, all the joys and challenges that go with it, David. All attention will be on Poetry Africa this week, and it's a great lineup. Amongst the first-time participants, it's also very pleasing to see some returning poets, Jessica Mbangeni, Ngwatilu Mawiu, Rustin Kuzain, Philip Hameo, Kobus Muman, and of course the veteran Don Watira. Don, as I said, was at the very first festival in 1997. Dates have also been released for the Durban International Film Festival, and we trust that attention has already been given to that, which requires a much longer lead time. And the DIF is an example of how these festivals can serve the growth of an industry. DIF now attracts serious local and international stakeholders. In the eyes of many people, including funders, are watching to see how DIF will step up in 2017 and maintain its function as one of the foremost festivals in Africa. And this reminds us also that the CCA and its festivals are created not for this university, but for the whole of society. The CCA represents a valuable interface between UKZN and broader society. And a reading of the UKZN strategic plan and African scholarship goals provides an illuminating understanding of just how well aligned the CCA festivals and programs are with those goals. It is hoped that the university will provide the requisite support for the continued growth of Poetry Africa and all the CCA festivals and programs. A word of thanks too to all the funders who have sustained the CCA festivals down the years, in particular the city of Durban, honouring Tim Nkosi, Ngobo and Guy Redman here tonight. These festivals contribute much to the cultural life of the city, and your support is vital to continued growth. So to conclude, Ed Donker, the first director of the CCA, sadly passed away in 2002. When I look at the list of previous participants at the festival, there are many poets who have also passed on, perhaps 20, maybe 30 of them. We were privileged to have them on the stage, and in a sense, they prepared the way for others that followed and will follow in the future. They helped build a rich legacy, a legacy that continues. And I remember that in 2001, a day or so before the festival, we received the news of the passing of Francis Bebe, a great Sansa player and poet from Cameroon. And to open the festival, we played a song of his that he had recorded at Poetry Africa exactly a year before. And the name of that highly emotive song was "The Dead Are Not Dead." And Poetry Africa is certainly not dead. The spirits of poets past, whether dead or alive, are still here with us. The purpose of looking back is to inform the future, and I can say with conviction that this festival is built on a very strong foundation and a marvelously rich history of poets and poetry. Long live Poetry Africa! Long live Poetry Africa!